Hello. Today we have a class on CME starting and ignition systems. On the board in front of you is a basic ignition system from a CME rig. One side of the board is a pre-Tier 2 engine, and the other side of the board is the newer Tier 2 engines. Now I'm going to turn the board around. That's the business side of it that we're going to work on. Just want to point out that we have an ignition switch, a start button, a battery positive, a battery negative. This switch is going to simulate an oil pressure switch or a clutch safety switch. We have a Murphy switch and an emergency shutdown switch. On the other side of this one, this will be the ECM reset. So as I turn this around, now we have the working side of the board. First I want to start off with what we're going to use to test these circuits. What we're going to use is a standard test light. Test light has a alligator clip on one end. The other end has a sharp probe for either piercing insulation or just for fine use. So as you can see, our board is powered up. The test light works. We're going from the battery negative to the battery positive. Next step on the board is the key switch. The ignition switch here is a CME ignition switch, and you can see from our battery positive we have a fuse. The fuse will light up, and then this post here is the battery post of the ignition switch. From the battery switch we go to the ignition post. The key is on. You can see the switch is lit up. If I was to turn the key off, we lose power. At this time, one of these wires goes to the starter button. Again, CME style starter button. You see it's lit on this side. It's not lit on the outside because we're not pushing the button. If I was to come around to this side, push the button, not only does the test light light, the power travels up to the starter solenoid. This is the start wire, and then we have a battery wire right here, which is always hot. This wire is simulating going to a starter, and then this is the ignition circuit. So if we were to push the starter switch, the solenoid would engage, the test light lights up, and also you can see the starter light right here lights up. Now, on the ignition circuit, we have power coming from the key switch. It's going to go over to the Murphy switch. The Murphy switch has a battery post on it right here, and that'll illuminate. It also has a ground. You can lose the ground. It's very easy to check for a ground. All you have to do is reverse your test light. Put the alligator clip on the positive, and then go touch the negative ground, and the light will light up. Some test lights are fancier than others. They might have different colors for the polarity. So we've checked that we do have power coming into the Murphy switch. But right now, do we have power coming out? We do not, because the Murphy switch is not depressed. The Murphy switch has a loop circuit in it. It's called SW1 and SW2. Now typically on the older rigs, this loop will either go to the kill switches or go to the oil pressure switch on the engine. Now on the rigs that you have to hold the button in until you develop oil pressure, then it definitely goes to the oil pressure switch. So if we were to push in the Murphy switch, it will click and light up what is simulating that our engine is running. Now over here, if we didn't have oil pressure switch, I can disconnect that and the light goes out. I'll reset it and we can start again. So this start circuit or this switch circuit is very sensitive. If I was to touch it with a test light, it would trip out. As you can see, the light went out right here. The best way to test this circuit here, the SW1 to SW2, is to use a jumper wire. You just take or a paper clip and put it across the two posts. If the Murphy switch will not stay in and you think it's this switch circuit, the test procedure would be to put a jumper wire from SW1 to SW2, then push in the Murphy switch. If the Murphy switch stays in, then you know you have a problem in this circuit right here. Right now we do not have a problem with that, and now we have power coming out of our Murphy switch. The Murphy switch on this setup is going to feed right into an emergency shutdown switch or an e-stop switch. If I was to push the e-stop switch, we would lose power going to our ignition circuit. Now if this was a diesel instead of a gas, it's labeled fuel solenoid. This wire would go to the fuel solenoid and it would cut the fuel off. So to test the kill switch again, we have power coming into the kill switch. Right now we do not have power coming out. So if I pull the switch, now we have power going through the kill switch. The power leaves the kill switch. In this instance it's going to the starter solenoid where it has an ignition circuit. It can also go directly to the fuel solenoid circuit or the on a diesel machine. So checking the output of the kill switch, again, gives you power, push in, turns it off. So in troubleshooting this older system, we've looked at many things so far. We've looked at, does the ignition switch have power? From there, does the Murphy switch have power? Does the SW1, SW2 circuit have power? And like we said before, to check that, we're going to have to jump that with another wire or it will pop out. If we had tickle switches on a rig that used the old Murphy switch, they would most likely be run through this circuit and would trip like that if you hit a tickle switch or a wobble switch. And then the emergency shutdown switch is, generally speaking, a heavier duty switch, so that will interrupt the power that goes to the fuel solenoid. That would be probably your later on down the road, that would be the next thing to check. The easiest thing to check when you're doing this type of circuit is go right to the fuel solenoid. Do you have power there? That's one quick, easy test. If you come up here and assume this is a fuel solenoid, not a starter solenoid, or in a gas engine if you have power to the coil or this ignition solenoid or starter solenoid, you say my kill switches work fine, there's nothing wrong with those. So I don't have a problem in this side of the circuit. I might want to check and see if I have enough fuel in the vehicle rather than pursue an electrical trouble. Going on to the starting circuit on this side, like I said, the starting circuit was very basic on this style machine. You've got power going to a start button, and if we can press the start button, you see it goes through the switch. It has just engaged this starter solenoid. You might be able to hear it, hear the loud click, and at the same time the starter light kicks on. So that's simulating cranking the engine while I'm holding the button. We're going to stop here, I'm going to hold for questions, and then we're going to pick back up with the Tier 2.